Welcome to another episode of the Supply Chain Ambassador Podcast. I'm your host, Abrauna Yakubu, helping you navigate the world of supply chain in a fun and engaging way. On today's podcast, I have a very special guest joining me, Judy Ann Hollander. Judy is a procurement specialist with a not so typical path into the field. Instead of following a straight career track, Judy's journey, JJ, has been shaped by working with incredible people across different organizations who genuinely took an interest in her desire to learn and were generous enough to share their knowledge and expertise. JJ obtained a solid toolkit of skills along the way and brings a fresh perspective to procurement, grounded in the love of learning and a deep appreciation for the people who provided support and the chance to grow. That support is what led JJ into procurement. Welcome on the podcast, JJ.
Thank you for inviting me. I hope that it's helpful to anyone who hears my path and recognizes all the twists and turns it can take. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks again.
Can you give us more context about your journey into your current role? It sounds like it's had quite the adventure, quite the twist, quite the turns.
It has. It definitely has not been traditional. Currently, I'm a procurement specialist at the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation, known as CDIC. And my path has not been typical. So I actually started out in broadcasting and my passion for radio. So I used to sit on my steps in the evening and try to tune in to different radio stations on my yellow Sony Walkman. So I'm dating myself quite a bit with that reference. But sometimes I would pick up like radio stations across the border. Like I remember listening to WLS, the Rock of Chicago, and I would hear like live versions of songs and different artists. And it was exhilarating as a kid. So I was lucky enough to get a job in radio here in Ottawa, and it was a dream come true. The people I met were so generous with their time. They taught me so much, and I learned a lot about communication and promotion and marketing and writing and public speaking. And I'm so lucky that my first experience was so positive because I really think it set the stage for my approach to work. It was the collaboration and the fun and the excitement. So it really, I think, made me realize that work could be fun. And it really, I think, set the stage for how I approach my future roles.
Absolutely. And work should be fun. We got to love what we do so that we can be able to express ourselves, bring our full self into what we do. And
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, what do you love about your work?
I love a lot of different things. I think the things that the career path has been so different that can I tell you a little bit about one of the jobs I didn't find or show me that I wasn't on the right path? Can I share that with you? Because I think it's going to lead into some of my other jobs. So another job where it showed me that it wasn't the right path was when I worked for an animation studio. So it's my brief claim to fame. So I think it's very exciting. But I got to work on several episodes of the Canadian cartoon series, The Raccoons. Some may remember it. It was on TV a long time ago, but I was a painter on that series for just a few episodes. But I'm quite proud of it because it's part of Canadian pop culture. And it was such a unique experience, but it was a very isolating job. You're working in the same room with fellow painters who are focused on what they're doing, right? It's attention to detail, and you're not really communicating. There's really no need for collaboration because you're just focused on the task at hand. And that showed me early on that it wasn't for me long term. But the role did help me to sharpen my focus and help me deliver meticulous work under time pressure. But all experiences are valuable. And when you move on, you take those things with you. But it really showed me that wasn't the right path. So that kind of brings me to the rest of my journey. And as you grow, you want to try new things and expand your knowledge. So you try new paths and you see where that might lead you. This took me to different roles. So I took different courses and expanded my knowledge. college. And overall, I think I valued every step because I've had a couple of different career paths that I'd love to share with you if that's okay.
Yes.
So I was a recruiter early on in my career, and that just gave me like a great perspective on reviewing resumes and setting up interviews and how to communicate with people. And I would work with contracts. That was my first kind of foray into contracts and placing people on different roles and different organizations. And then after that, I became a project manager in contract management and procurement. And that, again, it gave me so much experience in more experience building onto what I currently learned, drafting and negotiating contracts, working with a legal team, developing relationships with suppliers. And then I started drafting solicitation documents and RFPs and things like that. So that experience led me to work, believe it or not, as a privacy advisor, and that was great for filling up my toolkit as well, because in that role, I worked with procurement and IT and other key teams to identify and assess risks and look at mitigation strategies and learn about compliance with legislation. But now in my role as a procurement specialist, I use all those tools that I've gathered like every day. I use the drafting of documents, negotiating contracts. I work with different teams. I use and hopefully improve my communication skills as I go. And I hope to insert a bit of my creativity. So the list goes on and on. Like, I think it all comes together. So I think working in both the private and public sector in different fields has made me well-rounded. So definitely not a traditional path, but I think it's something we're going to see more of. So just that, I think the whole journey has given me different tools, like I said, to add to my toolkit.
Yeah, it's definitely not a traditional path, but it's certainly a path that is very attuned to what procurement officers do, right? A lot, lot of you've had a lot of experiences that sort of touch on what we do here in procurement. And I will add this. Most people don't know, but I also took animation in my earlier, when I first started, I went to school for animation. That was
Oh,
my initial
wow.
goal.
That's
So there you
that's
go.
amazing. We have that in common. Who knew?
You have two animators working in procurement too.
Yeah, see, so who would have known that would lead us to where we are now? Like, it's the path is just never a straight line. It curves and twists and turns, and I think that makes it great. That makes it exciting, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Now, you've been in your role for quite some time. Are there any misconceptions about what you do?
Perception is that procurement is a roadblock. There are rules and regulations and guidelines, and this can be, I think, perceived as a barrier. So I think it's really part of my job is to help each person that I work with to navigate the procurement process and provide guidance. And I think procurement can be like a puzzle because you've got budgets and timelines and stakeholders, et cetera. And
Yep.
all these pieces don't always fit together neatly. Some pieces are missing. Occasionally, the whole picture can change. So I think the challenge of finding the best way to get things done keeps things interesting. And I learn something every day.
Now, let's just hope that you're not referring to a 1,000-piece puzzle.
No, usually it's a smaller piece puzzle,
Smaller
but
piece.
still,
So,
that the challenge of finding those pieces and where they fit and helping my teammates and helping the colleagues that I work with on different teams is really, what I love. I think that procurement touches almost every department in an organization, right? And I get to learn about each business group and their unique challenges. And it's great to get different perspectives and just work to find solutions and solving that puzzle. It's a great feeling of accomplishment, I think, when procurement has helped a business team to meet their objectives. And I think it also builds relationships and builds trust when you work together like that. So yeah, I think the biggest misconception, it's a roadblock, but on the flip side, once you pass those barriers, it's just a good relationship building experience.
absolutely. The more we collaborate, the more we can really help each other along the procurement path. Today's episode was brought to you by Workaway Offices, Ottawa's premier flexible workspace provider. Their beautifully designed facilities offer everything from co-working, desks, and private offices to fully managed executive suites, along with meeting rooms, virtual business addresses, and more. It's everything a professional needs under one roof. Whether you're a freelancer, a startup founder, or a remote worker, Workaway Offices makes work fun and flexible. So visit Workaway Offices to book a tour and learn more. Now, have you
Oh,
faced
yeah.
any challenges in your procurement career, and how did you overcome those challenges?
So I would say that there's two that really are top of mind. I think that the first challenge that I tried to overcome was changing the directions as I did, right? So I followed my curiosity and I took on roles that were interesting and also where I could learn a lot. But there were moments when I was not sure where I was going to land and what the outcome would be. But those
Mhm.
experiences really gave me, I think, a perspective that I still rely on today. And both
Mm.
successes and missteps are important. So that I think was a challenge I had to overcome was just it's okay to try to shift your path a little and don't be afraid to try new things. And but it was a challenge at first to recognize that was possible. I think the second, maybe even more important challenge that I think, and maybe I hope that people can relate to this a little bit, is the transition between industries and different roles. I've been lucky enough to have great managers and amazing colleagues over the years who could read between the lines and see where my skill set could bring value, but that's not
Wow.
always the case, right? I think
Mhm.
you have to get good at translating your skills and connecting the dots for people who are reading your resume or when you're in an interview, because so many skills can be transferable or can be built on, but sometimes you have to make those connections for the people doing the hiring.
Mhm.
And I think once you've done that, once you get the hang of that, it's one of your strengths. But I think that's been one of the biggest challenges. It'll say, how does that role fit into what you're doing? And it absolutely fits in. But it's getting
Mhm.
them to connect those dots, I think, has been one of the bigger challenges. And like I said, I've been really lucky that I've had people who are working with me and hiring me in the past who said, you know what, that the way you're explaining that skill, of course it's transferable. Of course you can use that skill in this role, but
Mhm.
it's not everyone connects those dots. So I think that's been a real challenge. Does that make sense? Does that connect with you?
Yes, it does, because I actually spoke when I did an earlier podcast about my experiences about imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And you're put in a role and you're unsure, but when you really dive deep into the experiences that you have, and you look at all the problems you've solved and all the skills that it took to solve those problems, you start to realize, wait a minute, I've done this before. I am capable because I'm able to solve problems in a unique way that only I can do. And I think that helps. And so I definitely relate to what you speak of in terms of like how do you properly, how do you, how are you self-aware of your skills and how do you properly communicate that to hiring managers, to colleagues, to friends, right?
Yeah. And then it also opens the door, right? If I say I've done this kind of work before, maybe that could lead into something else. Like I'm a procurement specialist. Maybe I can work on something new because I've got
Mm.
skills that maybe you didn't know I had, and I can do something more creative. So you never know. So it opens the door. I think even in your current job, you can expand your skills and maybe get outside of yourself a little bit in the role you're in by saying, you know what, I have a new idea that maybe you didn't think of because my previous
Mm.
experience says that maybe I could throw something at you and see if it sticks. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of things that it can bring to the job.
Absolutely. Are there any new exciting things that you're working on in the procurement world?
Speaking of that creative slant that I try to bring to my job and kind of putting this kind of
Right.
full circle, in
Right.
addition to my daily procurement activities, I have had the opportunity to work with our learning team to develop new training tools. And that's something I am really excited about because people absorb information so differently. And I think understanding their learning styles, especially in a field like procurement, when there's different rules and regulations and guidelines and processes that we have to communicate, I think that can make a really big difference. And I'm sure you've come across people who learn differently. Some are visual learners. They
Mhm.
want to see an infographic or a chart or a workflow, or they want to make sense of things with a more hands on approach, or maybe a more interactive training module, or just some of those examples. So I've been lucky enough to work in an organization that encourages my creative side. And
Ah,
working with our learning team has been fantastic. So that's something really exciting. Again, where I can take some skills from a previous role, being more creative and running with it. And they've been really supportive of that. So it's been awesome.
I love that. I love that about you applying your creative side to work. And that's just a perfect example of that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
hopefully you get to do some of that too with your animation background someday. Do you find that you get to do
Right.
that as well? Do you get to put your creative side into your job?
So this podcast is my creative
I
side,
guess so.
right?
I guess so. What am I saying? Of
and
course. Absolutely.
and just to add to just in terms of like people learning in different ways, often I find myself in procurement as like a translator, right? It's or an interpreter, I would say, right? There's these policies and you're reading web pages that are yay long and the client's confused about what what they're supposed to be doing, what's their role and responsibilities. And then I feel like that's where I come in, the hero. Hello, clients. This long policy, these are the sections we should pay attention to. This is what they actually mean. This supports your project in these ways. These are the pitfalls we should avoid. So really, it takes having that skill to be able to convey knowledge, I think is very important. So I'm really happy that you're really diving into that in the learning capacity that you're doing.
And that's a great analogy. I think that translation piece is a great analogy because it's very true. Like we have to take all these different terms and conditions and components and legislation and say, here's how it works for you, right? And here's how we can interpret it and help you and guide you through the process. And that's absolutely part of what we do.
Yeah. Any advice for procurement officers?
I'd say don't feel like you need to know everything from the start because I don't think you will. One of my favorite quotes is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I think procurement touches so many areas, finance, operations, legal, and it takes time to understand how it all fits together. Some of the best procurement professionals that I know don't stop learning and
Yes.
they're not afraid to evolve with their role and they're curious. So I would say do that. Be curious and don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure. Let's figure it out. I
Mm.
think that's a great just path to success.
Or even, I'm not sure, but let me get back
Yeah.
to you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think thinking you're going to know everything is just not, I don't think it's just not practical, right? I think there's things happening all the time in
Mhm.
this new space and things to learn and things change. So just adapting is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's terrific. Any call to actions to listeners?
Say that if you're curious about, I would say procurement, but even anything for that matter, trying to figure out what your next steps might be in general, I
Mhm.
would say start asking questions and putting yourself in the room where people are doing the kind of work that you want to do. And I think you'd be really surprised how many doors open when they see a willingness to learn and that curiosity.
Wow, that's terrific advice. That's something I keep trying to tell my youngest brother. Get involved in the activities of and meet the people that do the things you want to do
Yeah,
and show
absolutely.
that initiative, show and also try to be a problem solver for them, right? Because they may have capacity gaps that they may not know or that they know, but they just need help with. So
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Wow. Okay. I wish this podcast could go on long because I feel like you just a wealth of experience and knowledge. And I'm sure we could have a side discussion on the world of animation. I'm sure that would be very interesting as well.
Yeah,
But,
let's I want to hear more. I want to hear more. And I just
right.
want to say that thank you for inviting me because it really made me reflect on my career path, which I hadn't really done in a long time. So it gave me the chance to look back at the jobs I've done and where I am. And like I said, I hadn't done that. So being reflective was really great. So I appreciate that you inviting me gave me the chance to do that. So I hope it was interesting and I really appreciate it.
No, I absolutely. And I appreciate it on my end because I get to meet such wonderful people in procurement, right? It gives me the opportunity to really just get to dive deeper and see people that work in procurement, their struggles, their successes, their stories. So it's just as much a pleasure of mine to have you on the show.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So with that, we got to meet Judy. Thank you for listening to this episode. We'll have more fantastic guests for you in the next episode, but be sure to like and share this podcast to those who you think will find benefit to it. With that said, thank you. Take care, be well, be safe. Bye-bye.